All right. Okay, guys, everybody got to pee instead of me, so let's go.
Okay, a couple people have asked me about getting a print of one of the Doria paintings here. Ken, will you make your announcement, please? Because I'm selling raffle tickets, but I don't know anything.
Okay, well, it has come to my attention that a couple of people have asked about the paintings that I did of the Doria, you know, going down and then deteriorating on the seabed, and is there any way that those are available as prints? And they absolutely are. My partner Vern and I don't know where Vern went. There he is. He handles all of that, and anything like that, and any artwork of mine that you've ever seen in a book or in a documentary, basically any of it can be made into a giclée reproduction on canvas. There's a company that we work through in sort of El Segundo area, and it can be any size you want, from this big to this big, and I have high-res scans and 4x5 transparencies of all of these paintings. So the Andrea Doria scenes are available as giclées. If you go to kenmarshall.com and be sure to spell it right, M-A-R-S-C-H-A-L-L, not Marshall, but Marshall. Then you'll get a hold of Vern, and he can work it out with you, and these giclées can be made. And the actual paintings, the original paintings, look a little bit different from what you saw in Peter's show. Where is Peter? Oh, there you are. Yeah, I want to get better scans to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it looks like you photographed it out of a book or something.
I did.
And so I can get.
It was for a good cause.
So anyway, yeah, I'm a perfectionist, so if it doesn't look exactly the way I painted it, then I want to help the person to get an image that'll look a little bit better. So we'll get on that, and I think that does it.
All right, it's come to my attention that there's some people that are overdue on their dues, and there may be a couple others here that want to join but haven't yet. So back here by the, there she is. Okay, in turquoise, she takes the money for the dues, or we'll sign you up for new. Also, for the national organization, there's power ships, and if somebody's looking to join national, I've got a little thing right here. It's $50 a year. It's a tank of gas. So, raffle tickets. Oh, tell them.
It's $20 a year for chapter dues, and that includes the ocean.
Yeah, $20. That's 5 gallons of gas. The meetings are free, if you remember, right?
That's right.
And I don't know what he's talking about. I drive a Tesla.
Now you just need to have a power plant for your car.
Yeah. I do. It's on the roof of my house.
Okay, our next speaker is Tom Varney, and as I told you before, he's come all the way from Alaska.
Woo! Tom!
And, in Power Ships magazine about, 3 years ago? 2.5 years ago, there was an article that he wrote on this very subject of his building the models. I tried to find it. I've got all those, and I found every magazine but that one. And so I was going to have some copies here for you if you needed it. Anyway, Tom Varney will talk on the building the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth.
We're going to kill the lights here in a minute because I look so much better in the dark. Thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties. This is why you come in early and set stuff up. And we didn't today. Okay. I'm on the tail end of a cold, so we're going to go as long as my voice does. And today's group is a classic example of how Queen Mary brings people together. Once I put the word out that I was doing this, you notice your crew got a little bigger, And I'm really beyond pleased that I have representatives from every phase of my life.
It's scary, huh?
It is. It's scary, and they're talking to each other. But seriously, from my hometown in Ohio, from my past career at Pizza Hut, different places, and my next door neighbor from Anchorage is with me, and I thank you all for coming and traveling the miles. It wasn't me that just traveled far, and putting up with 24 years of my model craziness. So, can we kill the lights so I look better?
Tom, where are you from in Ohio?
I'm gonna get there. Yeah, brought my own heckle squad too.
Talking to him, Tommy.
Yeah. You know, it boggles my mind at how a kid like myself growing up in the cornfields of landlocked Ohio ever got interested in ocean tours. I can't think back to any certain thing. I don't know if it was picture books in the library or reading the morning newspaper, which has been like a 50-year habit. I remember reading about Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth's ending of their careers, and Queen Mary becoming a movie star, and it was just always a passion for me. So as I grew up and went to college at Kent State University, where I studied architectural drafting, and that's so long ago we did it on drawing boards. And once I finished there, it was go west, young man, and I went to California. And I got a job right away with an architect, but it was temporary. So when the job ended, I had to do something or go back to the cornfields. And so what's the next logical step I could make would be becoming a Pizza Hut restaurant manager. And one of the very first people I met in that career is sitting in our audience today. And then about everybody else I met in that career is here today as well. And so I ended up relocating to the Central Coast, and I was a Pizza Hut manager for 10 years, basically throughout the 80s. And it was during that time, 1985-ish, I made my first trip to Queen Mary. And for me, it was a pilgrimage. And what was so freaky about it was I hadn't really started all my intense research yet to build models. I just came aboard and instinctively knew where everything was. And I enjoyed the entire day until I got to the Veranda Grill and discovered it was a hot dog stand and had an apoplectic fit. But thank God that's been rectified. And fast forward 5-6 years later, a series of unfortunate events and bodily injuries caused me to leave the restaurant business, which caused me to leave the Central Coast. Now, you know me, logical steps. Next logical step was to move to Anchorage, Alaska. I mean, who doesn't want to go from Pismo Beach to Anchorage, Alaska, right? This guy. So, but I basically I had to return to the drawing board. And in those years I was flinging pepperonis, the drawing board had become a computer. So a whole new set of skills I had to learn, which I did when I moved to Anchorage. And one of the first fellas that I met in CAD school up there, his name is Mark, he was looking for a roommate, and I was looking for a nice place to stay. And we were roomies, shared an apartment for about 4 years, and that way we could save our money and buy our own homes someday. And during that time, let's say 1995-ish, he says, Tom, I'm going to go down to Long Beach. I'm going to visit some friends and just make a long weekend out of it. So, of course, you know what my first response was, you should go see Queen Mary. Then I got the eye roll. Right. And I went, okay, he's going down there to party. No. He returns to Anchorage. His eyes are this big around. So I'm like, oh, I see you met Mary. He was just beside himself. Oh my God, Tom. we spent the whole day, all day Saturday, we just looked everywhere we could go. Now I see why you enjoy these old ocean liners so much, Tom. She's magnificent. You should make a model of her, Tom. A really big one. Ding. That offhand comment is what started it all. So then that began a whole period of, great, now what? So this was 96 that I really got serious about this. And the internet was in its infancy back then. There wasn't a whole lot of reference materials. So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Queen Mary is just one convolution, mess of convolution. How am I going to figure this out? So I went to the Anchorage Library, Anchorage being an ocean liner town and all. No books whatsoever. But we had a really cool Borders bookstore. And so I asked the guy at the counter, do you have anything on the Queen Mary? Oh, you mean the ship? I do. And he goes, well, I don't now, but in 2 weeks, this is coming out. I imagine this book is on most of your bookshelves. The James Steele book on Queen Mary. And I looked through it, and he said, well, I'll call you back in 2 weeks, and when we get it, and I, of course, bought it, and I'm like, oh my God, drawings. So I scanned them into AutoCAD, and just starting to play with it. So I had some decisions to make. What am I going to make this out of? How big do I want to make it? And so I thought, pulled it right out of my, you know what, 8 feet long, why not? Let's go for pizzazz and wow. But really, I didn't want to get to such a tiny scale that it would be too much of a pain to build. So I thought, let's just go for big and fix it so the two halves interlock, and I could carry each half, put them side by side in the back of my Nissan Murano, and take them on the road. Or at least get them out of my house. An 8-foot model was not going to allow that to happen if it was one piece. I also decided that I wanted to have the model lit. Interior lighting, exterior lighting, and I used the Poseidon model as my inspiration for that. So then of course I was looking through all these different pictures. This is a picture from the Steele book, and most people look at that and say, oh cool, people in deck chairs reclining. No, not me. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a life preserver there. I got to put that valve in. And I'm looking at, oh, there's one up there on the docking bridge. I'm looking at all this stuff for detail. So this is the first project photo that I can find. I don't have a lot of photos back then because back then my camera didn't make phone calls. So it was, 35 millimeter camera, film, and we took it to that great wizardry that is the 1 hour photo at Costco. Then you drop it off at lunch, come back after work, oh, look at my prints, and I'm taping them up just all along the house to try to, one after one after one, to try to take my photos and reference photos. And Mark had this cool exercise machine there that was wonderful to hang my drawings on. So I decided I would go as far as building the hall, and if it looked like Queen Mary, I'd continue. If it didn't, I'd pull the house together, throw them in the dumpster, and nobody would have to know. So, about that time, I ended up with the 8-foot canoe. And I was ready to start putting it under roof to build superstructure and deck houses and stuff. I thought, well, I better put this on some sort of base or bases. That way I could get, still have access to the inside to bolt things together. Here's where my mind went when I was trying to conjure this stuff. I knew I wanted to have some sort of walnut base. I knew it would look really sexy against this red. So my mind was thinking, take the pedestals and the bases off of trophies. Spin the brass bowler off the trophy and you would have, you know, something you could put repetitive. So I go to my local trophy store, Alaskan Memories, wonderful people, it's still in business. And I'm looking around going, oh my God, this stuff is tacky. And I went, I can't be doing that. And luckily, the shop owners didn't know I was there. They were taking care of somebody else. Now, I gotta escape. And I looked over on the other side of the store, and they had brass school bells up on the stand. Now, this is interesting. So I sneak over and I grab a bell. Clang, 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 clang. You can't pick up a bell quietly, right? My presence was known. So here they come. Can I help you with these bells? And once we got to talking, and we went to their counter, and we sketched all this out. So the trophy shop had a carpenter that made all these walnut things, because those were the plaques for the Employee of the Month awards, you know, those kind of things. And then I thought, well, this looks very nautical. So it was a happy accident. I was just fixing to sneak out of the store, but the brass bells caught me. Also about this time, as things were really rolling along, I met this group of model makers in Anchorage. International Plastic Model Society, which of course, I am not a plastic model. However, with such a small population of Anchorage, Alaska, oh, you build models? You're welcome. And so they didn't put too fine a point on it. But I learned in the 20-some years I've been hanging out with these old farts, so many techniques and tips and tricks, and you know, they give me some finger wagging and constructive criticism and some attaboys when I needed it. And so it's been a lot of fun playing with models with these guys. They meet every Thursday evening, and so I've been kind of their PowerPoint king. I've done PowerPoint presentations on the history of the Mary and the Elizabeth, and I put together a 6-part PowerPoint that exploded into the Queens at War, and it ended up being 6 chapters. Like, when are you going to show those again? So, this was my first foray into laser cutting. I was looking at the lifeboats thinking, how am I going to do this stuff and cut all these to look good and not cut off a finger in the process? So I was, now we're 10, 15 years into the project now, so technology has changed. Internet has changed, and I found a guy that said, hey, send in your AutoCAD drawing, I'll cut the materials out. So this is what they look like when they're put on the ship, but I was kind of worried about how would I paint them, because I was not looking forward to just paint every one of these things by hand. So I come up with a brilliant idea. I had this bed of nails that I had made by pushing stick pins through the back of a piece of foam core to support some other project I was working on painting. And I thought, I know, I'll just put one of those davits on top of one pin. Got it all lined up nice and neat, get out my spray paint, I'm shaking, I'm getting ready to go, and I'm just laying that paint down from above. I gotta get the sides, get the paint, and they domino into each other. The force of the paint. I squealed like a teenage girl on a roller coaster. So I quickly got out anything I could to reach in there and pry them apart, because if the glue, or I mean if the paint dried, that's it, you're done. So I'm pulling them all apart and going, thank God nobody saw that. Here's good news. I did not save the best for last. The lifeboats. mass-produced misery. See, all along, I mean, we're getting into like 18 years into this project. And all along, it was, you know, if I get bored with something on the bow, I'll go work on something on the stern, and to me, it looks like a whole new project. Not this. So, I ended up with finding some plastic model lifeboats, and I heavily altered them, and I thought, oh yeah, I gotta put the little loops, because everybody can see the little loops. The lifeboats are front and center, and put the little bumpers and all of this fun stuff. And so then, it was time for their casting call, because not all of them look the same. So I had to figure out which has the best side that I want to put facing out. The ugly side facing in, no one's going to really pay attention to. So then, like a dummy, I set them on a sheet of paper, and you know, I had to move them, and they just fell around. You know, it was, yeah, way to go, Tom. But that's what they looked like on the ship. So it was worth the hassle.
Yep.
Wow.
Looks beautiful.
So once everything got done with Queen Mary, I wanted to have some nice photos taken. Now, I've been working at a company called Anchorage Tank up in Alaska, and I do their AutoCAD work. And this year is year 26 for me up there working with them. And my boss, Jim, and coworker, Sam, they have a photography studio in Anchorage. It's a hobby studio, basically. But they had really nice equipment, and it was pretty much dust-free. So they said, Tom, bring the model into the studio, let's have some fun with it. So one night, Sam and I were doing I moved the model around. They moved the cameras around. Good deal. That way, if I broke something, it was my fault. And Sam wanted to have a dark background. I want to have the North Atlantic. I want to put the model in her rough, tough element. And Jim, however, wanted to do the bright white. He wanted the colors to pop. And speaking of colors, you all are familiar with the long-standing argument of what is Cunard red. So, my thought is, if you look at it and your first thought, is that red or is that orange? You got it. Close enough. So, and I have a whole bunch of model, we'll see some pictures of this later on, of some ocean liner prints. I'm sure we all do in our homes. I have this real tall wall, and my neighbor Debbie, who's hiding in the back, she comes over and says, Tom, that wall needs to be orange. I'm like, I'm not going to have an orange wall in my condo. I said, no, look, everything you have has a little touch of orange in it. Let's find some Cunard red. And so I went and got 3 or 4 color swatches from Home Depot, and I taped them to the wall. And I picked one. Okay, Debbie, come here. She come across the hall. Yeah, I like that one. We picked the same one. Off came the pictures, on went the paint. Now, you know how when paint is wet, it's loud? Imagine wet orange paint. And I'm painting this, and it screams at me in a Samuel L. Jackson voice, I'm orange! My God, what have I done? And then I went to bed, came back out in the hallway the next morning, and it had dried and calmed down. Put all the photos right in the photos and the paintings right where they were. And man, Debbie was right. I have an orange wall. She'd been trying to get me off of white walls for years. So, one more story about color. Back in the day, when we had the Yahoo News groups and things like that, it's where I started meeting a lot of you folks. I had posted a picture, and a man from England, Julian Hill, some of you guys know him? He responded back with an email that said, Tom, your model is coming along wonderfully, but your choice of funnel color is dubious at best. And I went, what are you talking about? He said, please see the attached. And he had sent me the color photo of the famous menu cover of Queen Mary coming through, and these gorgeous orange stacks. I went, aha. So he caught me just in time, because I had not put all of these guy wires and funnel stays and all that stuff. I had total access to it, saved the project. Because I can't imagine showing you this picture with Disney red colors. But when I first arrived here and visited the ship, it was during the Disney years, and it was Disney red, and that stayed in my mind. Yes, we're talking about
Saluting you, Tom.
She's saluting you.
So this is Mary After Dark. This is why I wanted to have it lit. Not drunk, lit. So the interior, well, all the portal covers and things are covered in translucent white plastic. And the interior has 4 of those, remember the GE Bright Sticks from years ago? They were basically a fluorescent tube with a power cord. And I just laid those in there, kind of haphazardly. And then all of the exterior lights are dollhouse lights, 12-volt grain of rice bulbs. And the wires go inside, and they plug into a 12-volt transformer. So that gave me the nice surface light. I just love how these highly varnished decks look like she just sailed out of a rainstorm. But the neat accident was, with the GE Bright Sticks laying at different angles, and the thickness of the hull was different at each deck, and I'll show you more about that on Queen Elizabeth. It gave the illusion of different intensities of light, looking like there's different activities happening at different parts of the ship, just like I planned it. Dude, I looked on that and went, damn, another happy accident. So here we have the sun deck. So happy I spent the extra time on the lifeboats. And man, this was not fun. Every one of those rectangular openings is 8 stabs of the X-Acto knife. Corner, 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 you get the drift. Took weeks to cut those out. Okay. That's not the end of the show, though. Those of you who know me know better. He's just getting started. Okay, then a lot of you folks from the Clan Mary group, I met on Facebook first, and then in person for the 80th celebration in May 2016. And I knew before I went down there, I just had a feeling that the ship really wasn't going to have any type of promotional materials. So Jim and Sam got together in Photoshop, and we started making posters. Made a couple big ones, and made some smaller ones. And this blur right here is Mary, always in motion. And she set up this meeting with myself and the guest of honor, Randolph Churchill. So we met at the piano out by the hotel lobby, and we were just signing stuff. And he said, I'll sign whatever you want, as long as I can take some stuff back to England with me. So I've got copies of a photo book I put together that are out on the raffle table. So if any of you guys win one, I'll be happy to sign it if you like, just as Patricia will sign her books as well. And while I was talking to Mr. Churchill, a very nice fellow, I'm sure a handful of you guys know him, and he says, oh, Anchorage, Alaska, there's a chapter of the Churchill Society in Anchorage. So I'm like, I have no idea. Sure. And he says, every year, November 30th, they do a birthday dinner for Sir Winston, black tie affair, at the top of the Hotel Captain Cook in downtown Anchorage. And he says, in fact, I've been to 2 of them. He says, Tom, you have to take this model. They will go nuts. Oh, good idea. And he gave me the contact information, and we set it up. This was in May, at November 30th. I took it to the Captain Club. So, this is me working in the shadows of the and but we had the model set up, but we didn't tell anybody that it lit up. And we saved that as a surprise. They said, Tom, we'll give you 10 minutes to talk about the model before we all sit down. I'm going, yeah, 10 minutes. And, but I tell you, these people are movers and shakers of Anchorage. They have buildings with their name on it, either downtown or at the university. I'm like, I've heard of you, yes. And of course, it's a group that only meets once a year. So they put out the word, hey, come see this big Queen Mary model, blah, blah, blah. And we had one of our waiters back here at the dimmer switch. I said, can you dim these lights? And when I give you a signal, oh yeah. So I start talking, and all of a sudden the lights dim, and I reach to plug that in. Like I said, movers and shakers of town, squealing like little kids when the lights went up. I will never get over that. And I don't think they will either. So,
That's beautiful.
that was at the, how we had it on display. And it was up against a window, so there really is just one tree and one off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. No, oh, wait a minute. That was, you know, because that's the windows of the hotel on the other end. And so my coworker Sam took these pictures at the meeting. And so every now and then, if I'm visiting the Queen Mary, because she stayed at the studio, they said you don't have to take her home. She's safe here. But the photographers are like, yeah, I have to schedule an extra half hour onto my portrait times because it takes a half hour to pull them off your model. But nobody's broken anything, which is cool. But I'm just playing around with my cell phone and the Snapseed app and just putting some of the like a old photo type deal on it. So I kind of like these that. Well, that one kind of looks like she can see.
Yeah.
It does.
It actually does. But what about the one in the middle? That one looks like she's at sea as well.
So here's the article that was mentioned earlier. I love the Power Ships magazine, and I saw this little blurb where I was looking for articles. Well, why not? I sent an email to the editor with 3 or 4 photos, and he's like, oh yeah, we'd like to know more about this. What's your word count? We take anything from 300 to 3,000 words. Cool. He knows not what he asked for. One more. I typed all this stuff out, and as any writer, especially Patricia will tell you, have somebody proofread, edit, edit, edit. And I was giving it to my friends, do I sound pompous here? Is this cool? Does it flow? Well, this sentence can go here, blah, 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 blah. Had it all done when it was ready, 2,999 words. There it is. And we set up a deal where the editors can come and go online and pick the photos that they wanted. And then we would send in high-res stuff for the magazine. I think they gave me like 12 pages.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of fun. And that's me. When Sammy was taking pictures, I hid the belly and went up next to the Queen Mary. Take my picture. So when the Queen Mary project ended, I wasn't sure what to do next.
Oh, God.
It doesn't float, Tom.
Well, I mean, within weeks of finishing up the Queen Mary model, I come across these two books by Ringo Verisco. I hope I'm saying his name correct. And but this one here was just amazing. It's just huge photos of the Queen Elizabeth that I've never seen before. And the cream of the crop, though, was if you buy the book, he would give you a disc filled with Harold Philpott's drawings. And I'm looking through these drawings going, my God, if I had a shipyard, I could build a Queen Elizabeth. And I thought, well, Tom, you do. You have a miniature shipyard. Why don't you do this as your next project? So I emailed Ringo, said, would you mind if I use these to this, you know, blah, blah, blah. Knock yourself out. So then I ended up printing a whole bunch of drawings and drawings and drawings. And that way I would end up with a matching set, sort of Mary and Elizabeth. Same scale. And my thought was, you know, Elizabeth to me was always the forgotten queen. I didn't know anything about her. I just thought she's Queen Mary with two funnels. Oh my, how I was wrong. And throughout this project, sometimes it chokes me up thinking, my God, what have we lost? So what was it, 1972 in Hong Kong?
72.
72?
Yeah, 72.
Yeah, she burned in an accidental fire of multiple origins.
I don't think it's accidental.
And
Sabotage, yeah.
so
They almost didn't want anyone here.
that's how it started. So you notice this little mini-me over here. I think that's from the Airfix plastic model. I was so excited to get going, I didn't even glue it. I just taped stuff together. But I wanted to have a three-dimensional deal to look at. And you see, here's my stack of drawings down below. And I tell you what, the nice part about ocean liner books is they make great weights. They're heavy, and
I have two of them.
so when I was doing this stuff, I thought that I had invented a new modeling technique. You know, stacking up each deck and all that stuff, and then rounding off the corners with a saw or sander. And man, I was proud, thinking, yes, I'm good. And then I found out later, oh, you used the bread and butter method. You know, the what? Yeah, they've been doing that all over the world. So, oh well, I didn't invent it after all. But it's a very handy way to end up with a hollow hull. So, this was before the coronavirus. But I thought, well, I had laid this out on the living room floor, and I thought, well, let me just put this here before I drink it and give it some scale. And so I forgot that Debbie was here when I had this picture in there, because that filing cabinet, this is her garage, this is my garage, and I sanded, and I sanded, and I'm thinking, I just was a madman. Dust everywhere. And she comes back from vacation, and you know, I'm breaking out the compressor, trying to blow all this dust off. Debbie's not going to know anything about this. And I get to blowing it out out through the door, and then the wind just blows it all out. So I think she's still finding dusty stuff that's my fault. And she suffers for my art. But you might notice, yeah, this picture here was, I didn't have the stern correct. It wasn't the right shape. It was turning out to be one of those dished sterns like Olympic or Titanic. And then when I got down to doing the sanding, it didn't work at all. And I put a couple pictures on Facebook. So with this project, I set up my own Facebook page. It's RMS Queen Elizabeth scale model, and I just throw stuff at it all the time. And So I had a photo up there, and they said, Tom, I don't know about your stern. I said, you're right, I don't think I like it either. So I ended up cutting a bunch of stuff out and redoing it. Put a new chunk of balsa in there, sanding it, filling. I mean, my God, there's more fill and spackle on there than share. So, but, you know, this was a real pain in the butt, but I got the desired result. It came out. So, I call them light tunnels because I don't know what else to call them. But it's a way for the interior light to get out into the portals. So I had, you know, all these drawings. I knew where all the portals were to be. There's a good shot of the interior. Now we're ready to put plating on. But first, it's time to paint the red on the bottom, because I wasn't putting plating on the bottom. And I just got a little excited and really went nuts painting it back here, because this was all covered in plates. But I was just so happy to see some color that I just kept going. Guess what? More bells. I returned to the scene of the crime. Alaskan Memories was still open, and the same couple, I showed them pictures. I went, that's what you did with those bells. Yeah, I need to order up 6 more. And every now and then I'll run into them at the grocery store or something. How's Elizabeth coming? Proud Papa always carries his photos, you know. And, but the Alaskan Memories, their carpenter retired. So I had to I looked all over Anchorage to try to find somebody to help me out with this. And I'd go to cabinet makers and things like that. Well, they're just too busy to do something like this. But I found the guy that was interested, and I wasn't in a hurry, because I ordered this long before, as soon as I started making the call, I went and ordered this stuff. That way I wouldn't have any delay, because this guy was delayed. It took 6 months for him to make this, because it's so hard to find black walnut. It's been, 20-some years, and you just can't find it. So, but he did a good job. And so now we've got all of this set up, ready to rock and roll. So, they don't make GE Bright Sticks anymore, but they still have these little fluorescent deals in here. And there again, you can see how it would give irregular light. And there's the transformers, 12-volt transformers in here. And then you had all of these, basically they were light strips with little plug-ins for the 12-volt lights. And I'd hook up about 5 to 6 lights on each one. There's over 200 lights on this model. I have run out of plugs. No more lights. That's it. We're done. Now we're ready for the hole. So, I decided to take laser cutting to the nth degree. I found another provider who, he told me what size sheets he had, tell me what thickness you want, and I went and drew every plate, every portal. Now I have gorgeous oval portholes, and all of the ones are scaled appropriately. And so the Harold Philpott drawings had plating drawings with hidden lines. So this one is going to overlap this one, going to overlap this one. And that's how I laid it out on the sheet. So that way when I broke it off the main sheet, this one goes here, next one, deck by deck. That kept me organized. And if I missed up somewhere, because if you had a 2 or a 3, you just drilled all these holes. If I messed up somewhere, I'll drill another hole, because I don't want to waste a portal. And at this point, I had painted the backside of all of the plate material, painted it black, in case you get any light leak coming through the opening. And I did the same thing with the white. So then, now here I'm on finished side up, and I had to determine what gets black, what gets white to make this. So it was a little crazy. And then I would go through and sand off the high points, just kind of round things up a little bit, touch it up with So the decking that I used is dollhouse flooring. Comes in sheets of 11 by 17, and so I just went out and I just put plain old. It's actually semi-gloss varnish, but it sure is shiny. Maybe mislabeled on the can, but you know, it was brush, sand, brush, so I got it the way I look. Now, technically, these are twice as white as they should be to the scale, but I don't care. It looks okay, and I did the same thing on Queen Mary. I've got to do the same thing on Queen Elizabeth. I want them to be side by side. Now, remember all those little 8 stabs into the, do all this stuff in AutoCAD, laser, cut. I've got gorgeous round corners, and you know, the uprights for the lifeboat davits. And he said, you know, leave little breaks so your parts won't fall out. But I didn't leave any, I wanted all of this stuff to just fall out. It's like, thanks, Tom, my machine was full. But, oh well, it was full. So now it's time to start putting things under roof. And so the nice part about having these plans printed up to the model size, I can just cut them out and just follow the bouncing ball. And so I pinned this in so I can start putting stuff for the promenade deck. But I have to start from the bottom and go up. One mistake I did with Queen Mary is I really didn't model any of the promenade decks. I didn't have enough information at the time to do it properly. Well, now I've got every bit of information I'd ever want about Queen Elizabeth with these drawings, so I modeled all of the promenade decks. Here's the third class. This was all open air, and this was their lounge, and it stopped at this bulkhead right here. Oh, that's it. There's some shots inside. Jump up to the second class, which was a deck higher. I like this shot. It turned out kind of neat. And when I was doing these drawings to cut out these windows, the laser cutter guy from Colorado, he sent me an email and said, boy, I don't know, Tom, I just don't like how skinny those horizontals are in your windows. Can you send me a drawing and space them out a little further? So I did, and he basically gave me both sets. Here, I'll give you all the mistakes. I don't care. Dude, charge me for it. You cut them. No, just, you can use them if you want. And I did. And it turned out really cool. Because the ones that were a little thicker looked too fat. And boy, I tell you what, trying not to break those things, they are hair thin. And try to brush them in there, paint them, and not just flick it with my pinky finger or something. I do that all the time. I forget where I'm at, and bing, oh man. There you go, try to find it. I mean, that's a modeler's first rule. You have to feed the carpet gods. Whether you want it or not, they will take your model sacrifice. So, and if you're working on tiny little bits and pieces, make 2 or 3 of them. Because even if you only need one, you grab hold of it with the tweezers and you get ready to go. And you want to do a dry fit before you put the glue on there. And bing! It goes flying. You have no idea where it landed. Until you get the vacuum cleaner out. And you're doing this and you're doing that. That's where you are. Things that drive you crazy. So, Elizabeth had a nice bow. And so So now it's time to start stacking these up. So I've got the flooring of the promenade deck ready to go. But I wasn't gonna cover the promenade deck windows with white plastic, clear plastic. I modeled the promenade deck so you can look in and see it. It's a bit ballsy.
Never stopped you before.
No, and it's not instant reward. People have to look and hunt things and go, I didn't know that. So, but this was, yeah, a lot of good news here. All these pieces were pre-cut, ready to go. So basically I made sandwich walls. Wherever you had, you know, the plastic in the middle, you'd have your inside paint, your outside paint, sandwich them together with a special glue that won't frost up the plastic. And then I had some grooved stuff here to make the wainscoting because Elizabeth had not one but two enclosed promenades. Almost forgot the second one. And I owe a shout out to Joe back there who found this color for me. So, where'd you go, Home Depot and get a couple of color swatches?
32.
Oh, I'm sorry. 32. A couple meaning 32. I'll leave a drink tonight. But, and then he would, you know, go up to the promenade deck up here and tape them onto the wall to see which one, you know. I'm sure he looked real cool doing it. I really appreciate it. Next thing you know, I get this email back, you know, it's, Home Depot, blah, 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 desert sand number. It had a quart of paint made out of it, and I laid that out there, and I went, oh, thank you, Joe, this is good. So, now, I don't know that Queen Elizabeth had that color, but I thought, you know, if I'm modeling something, why not give it Queen Mary's colors? So, the idea, though, was for this guy to wrap around here. So, wherever you're putting deck houses, I always put a little deal on the inside, like a kicker plate, so your houses stay where they're supposed to be. And the trick is, take away the thickness of the material so your deck houses are the correct size. And you learn that the hard way. So then this cutout here was going to cut out over this thing. So here you have the two rounds. Then you have to, if you're going to put lighting on it, you got to pre-wire it. And then with the decks and stuff that go above it, you have to put the lights on the ceiling and run the wires out and cut a groove where the wire comes in. You can see some wires coming in there. That way, when it all plugs up, you have some neat effects. So this was the first class promenade. And then these big wide areas here ended up being, I call them doorway boxes with all the pretty first class doorways coming in. And you've got the, I call these wall fins because I don't know what else to call them. But these go all the way up. And so I put a little groove in there to hold the inside structure. But these were all 3 decks high. This was all one piece of balsa wood that I had cut. And then this up here was the elevated area for her veranda grill for the sides. And then I discovered garden lounges. Yay! And I thought about just leaving it out, and I thought, no, I want to try to put this badass railing in there. So in order to go through the promenade deck, you went through the garden lounge. And then you had this is a doorway to the galley, and I'm not sure what room this was, but you walk through here. And it is really cool chrome framed windows. And I didn't put any furnishings in there because when you look through the windows, that's all you see is that railing anyway. And I just left it alone. Sometimes you just got to cut the madness down a little bit. So this, another ballsy move, was to make the sides of the promenade deck one long piece. So on this side, they're laying face down, and you've got your interior, all this wainscoting, you've got your door boxes and all that stuff set up, all your windows are ready to go. Flip them over, and you see this side is the exterior. And by the way, this is my orange wall, and it's Debbie's fault. And so here's some of the wraparound decks and how it was so cool how you can look in and see with the lighting. And this is before it got all closed up. You see how it wraps around. I wasn't sure what you were going to see and what you couldn't, so I had to model it, just in case. You don't see much. A lot of it's hidden. So then I got to looking at, looking at the model. Oh, I was just going to put a flat ceiling on and call it a day. No, you can see a lot of the ceiling. So I actually found some scale C channels to frame in the ceiling of the promenade deck. So I used some masking tape and marked off the spaces where the C channels would fit and put a red dot on which one gets a light. So I would pre-wire this and drill a hole and stab the wires in and wire all these together. And I like this shot, looking down through the front.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Such dedication.
You guys all know Everett Ward, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And his comment was, Tom, I never thought I'd ever walk the promenade deck of Queen Elizabeth, but I have.
Oh, that's so.
Thanks, Everett.
Oh, I love that guy.
Okay, meet the boys. The model site on Facebook is starting to get more popular. Why not have a little fun? And I was at the local hobby shop in Anchorage, and I wandered over into the railroad area. Yeah. And they had these figures. I went, these are great construction workers, but the wrong scale, they're a little too tall. But I thought I could at least play with them in areas where it wouldn't be noticeable. So I was having fun. These are the boys, these are the Scottish workers. I gave them all different names, I can't remember now. Backstories. I like this shot here with this guy. Now, looking through here, now you can see the silver chrome windows of the garden lounge. Now, he wouldn't be that tall. He's 24 inches taller than he should be. But anyway, working out here, and I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with these guys. But you can see all of that framing and all of that wiring coming in for the ceiling lights in the promenade deck. So that's where you spend your time, is basically butt scratching, writing yourself notes, trying to come up with a plan that I can't put this over this until I get this in there, and then I can cover it, because you're not going back in. If I lose a light bulb, it's done. And in 23 years, Queen Mary has yet to lose a light bulb. Wow. So, but I don't leave it burning all the time either. I have a 10-minute limit. Turn it on for 10 minutes and shut it off. So here the boys are working on the wheelhouse. And all of these wires are creeping out from your roundabouts over here. Now they're working on the veranda grill. Perhaps somebody can answer a question. At some point, this interior, this porch was removed, and this back wall was moved forward to make it flush to allow more interior spaces for more seating. Does anybody know when that happened?
I'm just gonna go Price is Right and say 1950.
Okay, I'll go with that. Because what the era I was going with both models was 1947, the post-war, getting ready to sail off into the golden age of travel. And I didn't care either way, because I really liked this, and I was going to have it in my veranda grill whether it was correct or not. So I pre-manufactured this and put it all together and then set it on the deck, and it was wrapped around the corners. Queen Elizabeth was a very curvy lady. Everything was rounded corners, which isn't so bad wrapping this balsa wood around, but I'll show you where it gets a little hairy. And, so here things are starting to stack up. And don't have any railings yet, but I was kind of moving myself up. And we don't have the sports deck done up here yet. But at this point it's starting to be fun. It's starting to take shape. So here you can see the stairway coming down. Then you'd walk around and take the stairway down. And there's a stairway around this corner that I almost didn't include. But you can just barely see it, but you see its shadow. So you know it's around the corner. I looked at that one night and I went, oh, that is so cool. But this is kind of a hint of what you get to see when you look through the promenade deck. There's a doorway going into the ship. I was playing around with Starburst one night, and
Fun sweaters.
so from this point, it was moving from the wheelhouse back. And one of the guys in my model club can make, and so I gave him an AutoCAD drawing of a shuffleboard court, and he gives me all these white printed decals, really cool. And he did the ring toss, and I got shuffleboard all over the place. And so all of this stuff was laser cut. So they're nice rounded corners. And I found some corrugated stuff for the vents. And I put the guys in this one because they don't really look out of scale just yet. So now we're getting things on the roof.
Literally.
So we got the veranda grill, then we've got the engine room, hatches, and the platforms for the funnels, and that's what she looks like at night. Now at this point, I wouldn't normally have lifeboat davits on yet, because man, I snag them with my fingers all the time. The idea is to work on the inside and from the inside out. But these guys have lights underneath them
Okay.
that I had to put this up. I didn't do that with Queen Mary. And it took weeks to fish wires through here and try to pull it through the open half. And you pull the splice off, and it's just, I thought, okay, I'll go with the danger of breaking the bottom half of the lifeboat davit just so I can have the wiring done. And I've snapped a few, I glue it, put it back on. It's no big deal. And it's funnel time.
Wow.
There again, all of this stuff was drawn in AutoCAD and then laser cut. That way you have all the rounded corners, and so, and even this was a fun one to work. This was some geometry lesson that I learned back at Anchorage Tank, when you're trying to put, rounded things with flat things. And so in essence, when you open that up, you've got a flat top, but the bottom is kind of like a sine curve. And then when you roll it around, and on that oval, it's a perfect fit. So that's where CAD comes in handy. Now I know the whistles are not brass, they're probably painted gray, but are they sexy or what?
They look nice.
They look good.
I'm not gonna do it. That's it.
I think they work.
Yeah.
I can show you.
So here the fellows are working on Monkey Island and trying to get all of this fun stuff together. And I tell you, this was a tough area to model. Because at this plane right here, things are different. They're off a half a deck, all the way through the superstructure. And that way you end up with, I've got another picture I'll show you that. one day I was sitting around in September and I was thinking, gosh, I got a pretty place to work. So I just took the picture right where I sat when I was working. So how I do this is I leave one half of the model over on the table, whoops, and then this half, or whichever half I'm working on, is on the workbench. There's my balsa lumber yard. There's Ralph Rushton's life ring. A lot of you guys know Ralph. So he's my daily inspiration. I walk in, how you doing, Ralph? And I wave to this, and away we go. And then, of course, these are scanned photos from Ringo's books. And then as I finish modeling something, I take the photo down. So like, okay, I'm done with that area. I don't need to look at that anymore. But if I do, I can always go back to the book and look it up. So now we're getting into railings.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so I was able to find from the model railroad community some scale chain link fence, perfect scale fit, and to put a lot of these railings that are on sports decks, where you have shuffleboards flying and stuff. The bottom part of it has some chain link on it. And I'm sure it was painted white or whatever, but I'm not painting this silver chain link, because I would just fill in the stuff with paint. So I'm leaving that right where it is. But it looks hot. And but then you have to do all of these railings, and, everything at a curve. So you can bend the plastic around, but I use real thin slabs of walnut, and then I take my jigsaw and try to cut out the curvature of the handrail, and then get it glued okay, and then I take the little drum sander on the Dremel and finish rounding it off. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. Sometimes the Dremel catches ink, and it's fine. So here I was working on the fantail with the equipment, and here it is finished. And then I realized, that guy looks like he's falling over. So it's at too low of an angle. So I snapped him off, repainted him, and when I get back home, I'll put him back up to more of an upright angle. So at this point, from here, this all up through the center is done. The only thing to do are lifeboats over here. What's this idiot doing? He's saving lifeboats for last. However, we had a good year at Anchorage Tank, and the boys got interested in 3D printing. And Sam, he bought a little 3D printer for home. Jim was not going to be outdone. So he got a bigger one for the office. Let's get a toy, let's reward ourselves. So Sam's pretty good at making 3D models, and I'm going to pass this around. I think we're going to be able to do 3D printed lifeboats for this. So this is the first very rough scale, just to see if we had the size and the shape of the hull. But even though it's flat on the top, our goal is to have, open tops and the engines and all of that stuff modeled from the bottom up. So I will pass this around, you guys can play with it. I don't know if 3D modeling is cheating on something like this, but I don't care.
It's probably not cheating. It's probably just something to get a workaround.
So this is Lizzie After Dark.
It really helps save time.
Yeah, black and white.
It can be as accurate.
Okay, this is my last slide. Do we have any questions before? No, Tom, I gotta pee.
No, it's just, I had a question, but I forgot.
Oddly enough, I don't. But don't walk over here. Just saying. Scott.
Did Lizzie go quicker? More quickly?
Much faster. a couple of things have happened. The question was, is Lizzie going quicker? It took 20 years to finish Queen Mary. Because one, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a real Helen Keller when I started that project. I just didn't know, and I wasn't in a hurry. And I was working the equivalent of 2 full jobs. I was working full-time at Anchorage Tank and almost full-time teaching CAD at Charter College and later on at the university. And so I just had a lot of stuff going on. And then I was also taking care of a 2-acre park in front of my condos. So there'd be like 2 whole summers go by that I didn't even touch the model. That was a wintertime project. And I wasn't in a hurry. So enter Queen Elizabeth and the technology of the laser cutting and blah, blah, blah. And I'm no longer teaching. So I've got all of this extra time. So Queen Elizabeth kind of went.
So that they can see it too.
I'll get the video.
So
of it.
I'm barely 4 years into Queen Elizabeth. My goal is to have Elizabeth done, especially if we can get these lifeboats printed, to have it done for the November 30th
It goes this way.
Winston Churchill dinner in Anchorage. And we'll see what happens.
Cool.
And so you guys aren't asking the obvious question.
What's
What
next?
are they doing here?
do with these models?
There we go, there's an obvious question.
Don't worry about that. Get a nice video look of it. 3D lifeboat.
I do have kind of an answer for that. It's always been kind of my fantasy to have Queen Mary displayed here.
Here you go. We've seen it.
And now that I'm going to have a match
Yeah,
set
take a look.
of the Cunard Queens, that kind of sweetens the pot a little bit. So all I can say now is that the folks here share my desire. And the plan is to include the 2 models in an upcoming museum project to be determined. I think their timeline is maybe next year for the 85th. And I've also put feelers out to Cunard Line to see if they'd like to have fun with a repositioning cruise to bring the models down from Anchorage to Point South.
See, that would be a repositioning cruise.
It would, it would.
More ways than one.
And I would sail with them and do things like this with the passengers there. They haven't said no. They haven't said yes. So I feel very confident that at some point, my models will be here. And I was told that, well, if that museum project doesn't work, we'll think of something else.
You need to include your heckler crew on the,
Yeah, on the repositioning cruise.
just saying.
No, I'm good.
Oh, no.
Are you going to build a 3rd ship?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what it is
As long
yet?
as my hands are steady
The SS
and I'm not tooling too much, I mean, I've got the bug. I'm really looking towards the SS United States.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, because a lot of my friends are deep fans of that. And I said, hey, you know, I'm thinking of the United States. I need reference materials, I need drawings, I need photos, and I want a tour someday if I go to Philadelphia.
Same here.
Done, and done by people that can make it happen. So, you got a question?
I do, I'm curious about the lights. If something should happen, like if the lights go, they don't, how do you fix them?
You don't. That's why I put a 10-minute time limit, so you don't get real hot. Now, I think I'm going to change things up with the SS United States and use LEDs. Of course. From the railroad community. And that way you don't have the heat generated. You can get the soft white, yellowish light, blah, blah, blah. I just have to figure out how to do that.
So each
And-
model is like, actually like you're improving as you go.
Well, same way with Father Perone's models upstairs.
Oh, okay.
You can go from, and you can see the improvement. Wow, you know, that's a lifetime of work. He started, you know, Titanic with the stairway at 15.
Yeah.
So, yes, sir.
It literally just came up with 2 questions. So, how long do you think you're gonna? Well, how long is your modeling career gonna be lasting? And have you ever thought of modeling Titanic?
I have the mini craft plastic Titanic, which is kind of why it took 20 years for Queen Mary, because there was about 18 months where I was just kit bashing the hell out of the mini craft Titanic. And because if it's mine, it has to light. And I'm drilling out all of those portholes. And what made that fun was there was a website called TitanicModel.com who offered all sorts of pointers on how to take this model that was made long before Ballard found the real ship, and lots of mistakes. Here's how you can make it historically as correct as you can. And so I have that in my home. And it's a mini craft. And the earthquake in Anchorage, yeah, here's a fun story. I was going to take Titanic to the Modelers Club on a Thursday night. And I had this plastic cover that I made for it by myself. And it had sat there for 18 years and hadn't moved. And I thought, I'm going to pick this thing up and it's going to just fall into pieces. So I did it real quick, it fell into pieces. The model was fine. So I have it sitting on the floor, pulling out. I need a bigger place. And so I thought, I'm going to set it over here on this ottoman because it'll sit there just fine, and I'll put it away later because I'd taken it to the Modelers Club, brought it home, set it down. I'd set it on my kitchen table. Wait, I need to eat breakfast. Set it on the ottoman. 45 minutes later, the 7.2 earthquake hit Anchorage. Just destroyed. Well, I mean, structurally I was fine in my house. I'm glad I wasn't there, because there was all that stuff on that orange wall. I just kept, it was just nuts. And I had set it in front of this rack of like 300 CDs that all come spilling out onto that Titanic. I thought, well, Tom, you build it, you can fix it. And almost got it back together. Good enough, and I ordered a museum quality cover for it. Leave it alone. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Not really a question, but something you might find interesting. If you go to the Wikipedia page for model ships, somewhere a reference link at the bottom of the page goes to United States Navy Archives website, and there they actually have a multi-page document showing if you want to submit a model to any government agency or any government research museum, like for example the U.S. Naval Museum, they have very strict standards on the kind of models, like the materials you can use, how they're built. And what's interesting is basically all these methods, like that, what you can and cannot do, basically equals to the models must be built in a way where if you left it alone in a glass case and no one touched it, it needs to last 100 years without someone needing to...
You just told me why I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, I'm sitting there alone all by myself up there in Anchorage just doing my thing. If I want pink funnels, it's going to have pink funnels. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because we talk about this a lot at our Modelers Club, because sometimes the Smithsonian will put out something. We're looking for models of, all these guys are ex-military. They make World War II armaments and World War I stuff. I mean, they're stunning, and I'm so glad they don't do ocean liners. Because they could kick my butt. But, the Smithsonian puts this stuff out, and then they say, how much? You kidding? Free! It's a modeler's dream to have something on display at the Smithsonian, and the government agency can't deal with it. No, you gotta put a price. $50 million, what are you gonna do? So, a lot of folks just, it's hard to deal with the government like that. And, so yeah, my dream is to have my stuff here, and I think we're really close to making it happen. So, cool. Any other questions?
Where are you from? Yeah, where were you from?
Thank you for playing along.
You're welcome.
No problem.
I know.
Yeah, I know very much.